The human stepped off the transport platform, boots crunching on the alien soil that glowed faintly under the twin moons. Every instinct screamed danger, but he forced himself to slow his breathing, eyes scanning the thick, twisting forest around him. The mission briefing had been blunt. He was bait. Everything here hunted for sport, and he was supposed to draw them out. Yet something inside him, curiosity, maybe defiance, refused to let fear take full control. A low rustle echoed from the undergrowth. The cadet froze, heart hammering. The forest was alive with movement, shadows stretching unnaturally. Twigs snapped, leaves trembled, and for a moment he thought he saw eyes, too many to count, glinting in the dim light. "Just observe," he whispered to himself, fingers brushing the grip of his pulse rifle. He didn't intend to fight, not yet. Survival here demanded patience and understanding of the hunters, not brute force. A flash of movement darted between the trunks. A predator, sleek and black with ridged limbs, faster than the human could track. It paused as if measuring him. The human swallowed hard and took a step back, careful not to make sudden motions. You're watching me?" he murmured aloud, the words sounding ridiculous in the alien silence. The predator tilted its head, a strange, deliberate gesture that sent shivers down his spine. The forest seemed to pulse, the light shifting as if responding to his presence. Every plant, every rock held secrets. Quicksand pits hidden under glowing moss, thorned vines ready to whip at an intruder. The human's mind raced, cataloging each hazard as he moved, calculating paths of safety while keeping the predator in view. It was no ordinary hunt. He was entering a living maze of death, and yet he couldn't tear his eyes away. He stepped over a fallen log and froze again as another rustle came from above. A shape dropped silently from the canopy, landing mere meters away. It was a smaller predator, lean and predatory, eyes fixed on him like molten gold. The human crouched instinctively, trying not to appear as prey. "I'm not here to fight," he said, voice calm but firm. The creature hesitated, sniffing the air, then bounded away without a sound, leaving the cadet stunned. It was as if the forest itself was testing him, not just the predators. Movement in the distance caught his eye, a massive shadow gliding through the mist. The apex predator. Unlike the others, it didn't rush. It watched, patient, calculating. Its size was enormous, limbs thick with corded muscle, eyes glowing faintly with intelligence. The cadet's stomach nodded. This was no ordinary hunter. It was a strategist, a mind as deadly as its claws. He swallowed his fear and whispered, "I see you. I know you're there." A sudden vibration ran through the ground. The cadet's ears caught a low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The smaller predators scattered, skittering into the foliage, but the apex remained, its gaze locked onto him. The human's pulse quickened. His training had never prepared him for something like this. Not fear. Not combat. Not even alien environments. This was a test of awareness, patience, and courage. And so far he was alive. He found a shallow creek and knelt to drink, careful to keep his movements minimal. Water rippled, reflecting the alien sky and the faint glow of bioluminescent plants. The sound drew attention immediately, leaves rustled, branches bent. He froze, eyes scanning every shadow. Nothing leapt out. But the feeling of being observed was suffocating. The human could almost sense the apex predator's thoughts. Each step he took mirrored in its silent calculation. Hours passed. Hunger clawed at him. Fatigue pressed heavy on his shoulders, but curiosity pushed him forward. He noticed patterns, how the smaller predators moved in coordinated sweeps, how the shadows shifted with the wind, how the apex always stayed just out of reach, unseen but present. He whispered aloud, "You're not like them. You think?" The silence answered him. A sudden crash made him spin. A tree fell nearby, a result of some massive creature passing. Dust and bark filled the air, but no predator attacked. The cadet's mind raced. The apex wasn't reckless, it wasn't hunting yet. It was studying. And he realized something strange. He wasn't just bait. He might be the first human it had encountered who could think, who could predict, who could survive longer than expected. He crouched behind a jagged rock, breathing steady, heart hammering. Every nerve screamed to move, but he forced himself to wait. The glow of his surroundings shifted with the alien light, casting long, trembling shadows. From somewhere deep in the forest came a whisper of sound, almost human-like, a signal that the apex predator, or the forest itself, was communicating. The cadet's eyes widened. "I'm learning," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. And then he understood. This hunt was not just about killing. It was about challenge, understanding, and respect. If he survived the night, he wouldn't just be a human left alive, he could become something more. Something the predators had never expected. A shadow moved again in the distance, massive and deliberate. The apex had revealed nothing, but its presence pressed into his mind like a weight. He smiled faintly, adrenaline mixed with awe. "Then let's see," he said, standing slowly, ready to step deeper into the unknown, curiosity stronger than fear. The human moved cautiously through the forest, every step measured, ears straining to catch the faintest rustle. Shadows shifted constantly as the alien flora swayed unnaturally in a silent wind. He knew he wasn't alone. The ground beneath his boots vibrated subtly, signaling that something massive approached. He crouched behind a twisted root, heart hammering, mind racing. His pulse rifle was ready, but instinct told him that weapons alone would not keep him alive. Suddenly, a pack of predators exploded from the undergrowth, claws slicing through the glowing mist. The human dove to the side, narrowly avoiding a swipe that would have torn through him. Dirt and leaves flew into the air as the creature's eyes, sharp and bright, locked onto him. His adrenaline surged. "Not today," he muttered under his breath, rolling into cover behind a jagged rock. The first predator leapt again, faster than his eyes could follow. He grabbed a low-hanging branch and swung, narrowly avoiding a snapping jaw. The forest itself seemed alive, roots and vines twisting in ways that slowed him and the predators alike. His muscles burned as he sprinted, ducking under low branches, leaping over glowing pits and sliding across slick moss. Every instinct screamed to survive, yet something deeper urged him to watch, to learn, to understand. A sharp screech echoed through the trees, and the pack hesitated. The apex predator had revealed itself, circling high above in the canopy. Its glowing eyes watched everything below. The cadet realized the smaller hunters were testing him, pushing him into traps while the apex observed. "So it's a game," he whispered. His chest heaved as he calculated his next move. One wrong step could mean death, but the human thrived on challenge. A sudden crack split the air. A tree trunk fell just ahead of him, blocking one escape route. Another predator lunged from behind, jaws open wide. The human dove sideways, rolling into a hollow among twisted roots. Pain flared in his shoulder as a claw grazed him, cutting shallow but stinging sharply. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the burn. "You're fast," he said aloud, voice steady despite his racing pulse, "but I can be faster." Using the hollow as cover, he watched the pack regroup. Their coordination was terrifying. They communicated with low growls and gestures, moving as a single lethal unit. The cadet noted each movement, each pattern, storing information like a soldier reading the enemy. His mind worked frantically, calculating angles, timing, and escape routes. It wasn't just survival, it was observation, and he knew the apex predator was learning from him just as much as he was learning from them. The pack attacked again, forcing him toward a narrow ravine filled with thick fog. He skidded across slick stones, landing hard on one knee, pain shooting through his leg. Behind him, a predator's teeth snapped shut where he had just been. His breath came in short, controlled bursts as he leapt to a higher ledge. The fog swirled around him, hiding him from immediate danger but also obscuring his path. He had to move, had to keep thinking, or he wouldn't last another moment. Suddenly, one of the smaller predators lunged from the mist, but it miscalculated its leap and crashed against a glowing rock. It hissed, stunned, giving the human a brief advantage. He seized the moment, sprinting along a narrow path lined with bioluminescent fungi, the light illuminating the fear and fury in the predator's eyes. He could almost hear the apex predator's silent assessment from above. Every dodge, every movement, every decision was being watched. "Why aren't you dead yet?" the human muttered under his breath, feeling the mixture of fear and exhilaration. Sweat stung his eyes, muscles ached, and every nerve screamed exhaustion, but adrenaline pushed him forward. He used the environment, twisting roots, slippery slopes, sudden drops, to outmaneuver the pack. For every predator that lunged, he found a counter, a way to turn their strength against them. The chase led him to a clearing where alien flora formed jagged barriers, creating a maze of shadows. He darted between towering plants, vines whipping at his arms, narrowly avoiding teeth and claws. Then something unexpected happened. The pack hesitated, looking upward, ears tilting. The apex predator had landed silently, massive and terrifying, blocking their path. The human froze, heart pounding. The smaller hunters looked confused, unsure whether to fight or retreat. The apex moved deliberately, not attacking, just asserting control. The human realized then that he had survived the first ambush not because he was stronger, but because he was unpredictable. His mind worked differently than the predators, his curiosity guiding his decisions more than fear or instinct. "So this is your game," he whispered, a small smile forming despite exhaustion. "I'll play." As night fell and the glowing flora cast eerie patterns across the ground, the cadet crouched, keeping low, listening, learning. He knew more challenges awaited, bigger and deadlier than the pack he had just escaped. The apex predator remained above, watching, waiting, calculating. The human's heart pounded with fear and excitement, and for the first time he felt something he hadn't expected. The thrill of the hunt was shared, and maybe, just maybe, he could turn the forest itself into his ally. He rose slowly, scanning the shadows. His shoulder throbbed, sweat and blood mixing, but his eyes were sharp, mind alert. The predators were clever, the apex was smarter, but curiosity burned inside him brighter than fear. The hunt was far from over, and he knew every step forward was another test. He whispered almost to himself, "Show me what you've got." And with that he stepped deeper into the alien forest, ready for whatever came next. The human paused at the edge of a misty canyon, lungs burning, muscles trembling from the relentless chase. The glowing forest behind him was quiet now, too quiet. Every instinct screamed that the predators were near, and the apex was watching. He scanned the terrain, trying to read the patterns, the subtle signs of movement in the fog. Something was different. The usual chaos of the hunt was replaced by silence, deliberate and unnerving. A low rumble echoed from above, vibrating through the rocks beneath his boots. The human froze, heart hammering, and slowly lifted his gaze. The apex predator descended from the canopy with a grace that seemed impossible for its massive size. Its limbs flexed silently, eyes locked on him. He felt exposed, yet strangely challenged. It didn't roar, didn't charge. It watched, measuring him as if evaluating a puzzle, not prey. He swallowed hard, forcing his shaking hands to remain steady. "I'm not your enemy," he whispered, voice barely audible. The predator's eyes narrowed, tilting its massive head. It took a deliberate step closer, each movement filled with intelligence, not instinct. The human's mind raced. Could it understand him? Could it truly make a choice? The thought both terrified and fascinated him. Suddenly, a pack of smaller predators burst from the undergrowth, teeth bared, claws ready. The human tensed, ready to dodge or fight, but the apex predator acted first. It leapt forward, immense shadow swallowing the pack, and with a single precise strike tore through the lead hunter. The others froze, hissing, confusion written on their movements. The human's breath caught in his throat. He had expected death, yet here he was, still alive. The apex had chosen, not him but the challengers. "What? Why?" he muttered, backing away slowly, eyes wide. The apex circled the clearing, tail flicking, each step calculated. The smaller predators retreated into the mist, unsure whether to fight or flee. The human realized something astonishing. The apex wasn't just hunting for food or sport. It was testing him, observing his reactions, gauging his intelligence. Survival wasn't enough. He had to earn its recognition. He crouched behind a jagged rock, adrenaline coursing through every vein, trying to steady his racing thoughts. Every decision, every twitch of his body was being watched. "I see you," he whispered, eyes never leaving the glowing, massive form. "I understand you're not like the others." The forest seemed to hum in response, the light shifting subtly, shadows stretching and twisting around him. A sudden movement made him spin. One of the smaller predators had circled behind him, claws scraping against stone. He barely dodged, sliding down a slope and rolling into a shallow pool of glowing water. Cold seeped through his clothes, but he ignored it. He could hear the apex above, almost like a heartbeat in the distance, steady and deliberate. This wasn't a predator hunting instinctively. It was a strategist, analyzing him like a living puzzle. He realized then that he had choices too. He didn't have to flee blindly. He could observe, predict, and even manipulate the hunter's behavior. Slowly he raised his pulse rifle, not to fire but to signal. He pointed toward a dense thicket, using his body and voice to lure the smaller predators. They followed, and the apex watched silently, a faint flicker of curiosity in its glowing eyes. The human's voice grew steadier. "This way. Here." He ducked behind a tree as the pack followed his subtle cues, moving exactly as he hoped. The apex moved closer, tilting its massive head as if impressed by the human's strategy. Every heartbeat in his chest was loud, every breath a struggle, but he forced himself to remain calm. He knew this was the first real connection he had with the apex, a silent understanding forming between hunter and human. Suddenly, one of the smaller predators misstepped, tripping over a root and sliding toward the edge of a glowing pit. The human seized the moment, calling out a sharp command, almost instinctively, and the pack scattered in confusion. The apex landed nearby, silent and massive, observing his choices with careful attention. The human's pulse raced. This was no ordinary hunt. This was a test of intelligence, patience, and courage. A faint sound reached his ears, almost like a whisper carried on the wind. He tilted his head, listening, and realized it came from the apex itself, a low, rumbling vibration that resonated through the rocks. It wasn't a roar, not aggression. It was communication, acknowledgement. The human's lips curved into a small, exhausted smile. "You're teaching me," he whispered, awe and fear blending into exhilaration. "And I'm learning." The forest seemed to shift in response, shadows stretching long and deep, alien plants bending subtly, almost curiously. The smaller predators vanished into the mist, leaving only the human and the apex. He felt the weight of the creature's presence, massive and intelligent, pressing into his mind like a test. Every movement he made, every breath he took was analyzed, and yet he was still alive. He realized then that he had earned something impossible: attention. He stepped forward cautiously, chest heaving, legs trembling from exhaustion and adrenaline. "I'm not like them," he said aloud. "I'm human. I think. I learn." The apex circled, watching, testing, yet offering no attack. The human understood for the first time that the hunt had changed. The predator had made a choice, not to kill but to observe, to measure, to challenge him in ways the forest itself could not. The night deepened, mist swirling like smoke around twisted roots and glowing flora. The human stood alone in the clearing, body aching, heart racing, mind alive with exhilaration and fear. The apex watched silently, massive eyes glowing with intelligence and curiosity. For the first time, the cadet understood the unspoken rule. Survival here was not just about speed or strength, it was about thought, courage, and audacity. He inhaled deeply, feeling the alien air fill his lungs. Every instinct screamed that greater dangers awaited, yet excitement surged through him. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "I'll meet your challenge." And with that, he stepped further into the shadows, ready for the forest to reveal the next trial. Knowing the apex predator had already chosen to make him more than prey, it had made him a participant in a hunt unlike any other. The human pressed deeper into the forest, muscles sore, mind buzzing with every movement of the predators he had just survived. The glowing flora shifted around him like living walls, alien vines curling and twisting with each step. He knew the apex was still watching, its presence massive and silent somewhere above, a constant pressure on his senses. He didn't feel fear anymore, not the paralyzing kind, but a tight, focused alertness like a predator in its own right. Suddenly he spotted a smaller predator ahead, crouched on a rock, eyes glowing in the dim light. It hissed, a sharp, wet sound, and lunged toward him. The human rolled to the side, feeling the wind of its claws brush past his arm. He stumbled slightly, caught his balance, and raised his hand in a deliberate motion. The creature froze, tilting its head as though confused by his calm, deliberate behavior. "I'm not your enemy," he whispered, voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. The predator's ears twitched, then it retreated, disappearing into the shadows. He moved cautiously, noting the patterns in the predator's behavior. They weren't mindless. They followed rules, unspoken signals he was beginning to understand. Suddenly, a pair of massive predators emerged from the fog, circling each other before landing near him. The cadet froze, but instead of attacking, they eyed him warily, unsure of his intentions. He realized then that the apex predator had been shaping the smaller hunter's behavior, subtly manipulating the hunt. His mind raced. If he could read the predators, anticipate their movements, maybe he could use them against each other. He spread his arms slowly, stepping toward a narrow path lined with jagged rocks. "Follow the path," he said softly, more a command than a plea. One of the predators paused, then cautiously moved along the line he had indicated. The other mirrored it. The human's heart surged. He was shaping the hunt, turning the forest into a battlefield of his own design. A rustle came from above. The apex descended, landing lightly on a massive branch, eyes glowing faintly. The cadet froze, knowing it had seen everything. It tilted its head, massive limbs flexing as if evaluating his ability. The human forced himself to breathe steadily. He knew the apex could strike at any moment, but it didn't. Instead, it watched, giving him silent permission to continue. A strange bond formed in that instant, a mutual understanding born not of trust, but of respect and challenge. He noticed another predator sneaking through the undergrowth, attempting to flank him. He crouched low, calculating, then shifted his weight deliberately, snapping a branch beneath his boot. The predator froze, momentarily distracted. The human moved, guiding it along the path where it became tangled with another hunter, forcing a skirmish that sent both retreating with hisses. He exhaled slowly, pulse still racing, amazed at how small maneuvers could change the dynamics of the hunt. "This is unbelievable," he whispered, voice trembling with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Sweat streaked across his forehead, stinging his eyes, but he ignored it. He felt alive, more aware than ever, every sense heightened by the predator's movements and the apex's silent observation. The forest itself seemed to shift with him, paths opening and closing as if responding to his decisions. Suddenly, a shadow fell across the clearing. A massive predator, unlike any he had seen, stepped into view. Its limbs were thick and powerful, eyes burning with a cunning intelligence. The human froze, unsure whether it was ally or enemy. Then he noticed subtle signs, posture, the way it tilted its head. It recognized the apex's authority. It wasn't attacking, it was calculating, weighing the human's actions against some unspoken rule. The cadet's pulse raced. He realized the forest had more layers than he had imagined. Some predators followed instinct, others strategy, and a few, like the new arrival, waited, observing and adapting. He whispered under his breath, "I have to keep learning. I have to stay ahead." Every step forward now required thought, observation, and daring. One mistake could end everything, but one clever move could turn enemies into unwitting allies. He led the predators along a narrow ridge, using light and shadow to manipulate their perceptions. The smaller hunters hesitated, their instincts clashing with their training. The massive predator followed quietly, its glowing eyes watching his every action. The human realized then that the apex had already chosen him as a participant, not just prey. Every move he made now was a test, a negotiation with creatures far stronger, faster, and more intelligent than himself. A sudden screech split the air, echoing off distant cliffs. The smaller predators scattered into the fog, but the massive one remained, circling him slowly. The human's chest heaved. "I'm not just surviving," he whispered, almost in awe. "I'm shaping this hunt." He could feel the apex predator's gaze from above, massive and intelligent, acknowledging his progress without a single word. The human crouched behind a moss-covered boulder, rubbing his bruised shoulder where a claw had grazed him earlier. The adrenaline still thrummed through his veins, heightening every sense. The forest was alive, not just with predators but with opportunities. Each predator was a piece on a chessboard, and he had just begun learning how to play. He felt a thrill unlike anything before, a combination of fear, strategy, and raw curiosity. From the shadows, a low growl echoed, vibrating through the ground. The massive predator stepped closer, tail flicking, eyes gleaming. The human met its gaze without flinching. He smiled faintly, muscles tense, heart racing. "Then let's see who adapts faster," he whispered. And with that he stood, moving carefully through the mist, weaving strategy, courage, and cunning into every step. The hunt was no longer about fleeing. It was about shaping the forest, reading the predators, and proving to the apex that he was more than just bait. He was a force it could neither ignore nor underestimate. The human paused at the edge of a vast clearing, glowing mist curling around jagged rocks like ghostly fingers. His body ached from days of running, dodging, and observing, but his mind was sharper than ever. Every predator in the forest had tested him, yet none had touched him in the last hour. He knew the apex predator had been watching, waiting for this moment. The rules of the hunt were about to change. From above, a shadow fell across the clearing. The apex landed silently, massive limbs flexing as its eyes locked on him. The human's heart pounded, a mix of fear, excitement, and curiosity flooding every nerve. He could feel its intelligence pressing into his mind, analyzing, judging, measuring. "I'm ready," he whispered, voice steady despite the adrenaline roaring in his chest. The predator tilted its massive head, a silent acknowledgement, as though it had been waiting to see if he would speak, if he would confront the moment instead of fleeing. A low growl rumbled through the clearing, and the smaller predators hesitated at the edges, watching the interaction. The human took a careful step forward, scanning for traps, hazards, and sudden movements. "I'm not your prey," he said louder this time, his voice echoing off the jagged cliffs. The apex's gaze didn't waver. It crouched slightly as if testing his courage, measuring his intentions. The human's pulse raced, but he kept his stance firm, showing no fear, only focus. Suddenly, one of the smaller predators lunged toward him, claws extended. The human sidestepped, letting the momentum carry it past him, then grabbed a hanging vine and swung behind it, narrowly avoiding snapping jaws. The apex observed without moving, its presence overwhelming yet patient. The human realized then that survival alone wasn't enough. To redefine the hunt, he had to act with understanding, not aggression. He had to show the predator that he could think, adapt, and respect the rules of the forest. He crouched low, scanning the glowing terrain for patterns in the apex's stance. Then, in a daring move, he stepped into the open, deliberately showing himself. The predator tensed, tail flicking, muscles coiled. "I see you," he whispered. "I understand you. I'm not here to fight blindly." The apex lowered itself slightly, massive eyes gleaming with a faint, curious intelligence. The human felt a thrill of recognition. This was no longer a hunt in which he was merely prey. He had become a participant, a strategist, a force to be measured. A sudden rustle behind him drew his attention. A pair of smaller predators circled, attempting to flank him. Without hesitation, he pointed toward a patch of alien vines. They hesitated, confused, then turned instinctively into a tangle of their own making. The human's lips curved in a faint smile. He had manipulated the hunters subtly, demonstrating his awareness, his wit. The apex moved closer, massive claws sinking slightly into the glowing soil, eyes following every action with sharp intelligence. "Impressive," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if the predator could hear him. Yet the forest seemed to respond, shadows stretching in strange, deliberate ways, plants shifting as if alive. Every predator around him paused, watching, sensing the change. The apex had chosen not to attack, had chosen to test, and the human had risen to that challenge. He realized then that the rules were no longer fixed. The hunt could be shaped, redefined by thought, courage, and strategy. The ground trembled suddenly. Another massive predator, unseen until now, emerged from the mist, but it stopped immediately, recognizing the apex's authority. The human's breath caught. The forest had layers he hadn't imagined, alliances forming, predators submitting to hierarchy, all under the apex's control. He understood, with a shock of awe, that he was influencing these dynamics, bending the forest's deadly rhythm with nothing but observation and daring. The apex moved closer still, landing just a few meters away. Its massive head lowered, massive eyes locking on his. The human met the gaze without flinching, muscles tense, heart racing. "I'm not weak," he whispered. "I learn. I adapt. I survive." The predator's tail flicked, brushing the glowing moss, and then, in a motion too fast for any normal human to anticipate, it stopped, almost bowing its massive head slightly. The human's mind reeled. Recognition. Respect. Survival had turned into acknowledgement. The smaller predators dispersed quietly, leaving only the human and the apex in the clearing. Silence fell, broken only by the human's ragged breathing. He lowered his pulse rifle, the weight in his hands a reminder of the long struggle. Every step, every movement, every calculation had led to this. He had not only survived the hunt but had reshaped it. The apex's presence no longer felt like threat alone. It felt like an understanding, a challenge, a bond forged in fire and fear. He took a slow step forward. "We can end this," he whispered, voice soft, steady. "Or we can continue, together." The apex tilted its head, massive limbs flexing, glowing eyes studying him. The forest seemed to exhale around them, the glowing flora pulsing with a strange rhythm, as if acknowledging the shift. The human's chest heaved, muscles trembling, and a smile broke across his face, a mixture of exhaustion, triumph, and awe. The apex stepped back slightly, massive claws pressing into the glowing soil. The hunt was over, not with death, but with understanding. The rules had changed. The predators would no longer see him as mere prey. The human had proven his worth, not through aggression alone, but through courage, curiosity, and intelligence. As he looked across the clearing, glowing mist swirling around twisted roots and alien plants, he realized something profound. The forest, the predators, the apex, they had not defeated him. They had taught him. And he had survived not as bait, but as a participant, a strategist, and perhaps, in time, something more than any predator could anticipate. A low rumble came from the apex, almost like a growl of approval. The human smiled faintly, chest heaving, legs trembling. "Then let's see what comes next," he whispered, stepping forward into the glowing mist, ready for the future, knowing the hunt had been redefined forever.